In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. The honesty of your own solitude. So it begins. Another moment is found when one member of the human species can report back to a cyberspace listening humanity, or through a species listening through cyberspace. One thing I am very fascinated by is that everything that I care for currently in my life, everything will pass on and will go forward in the space-time continuum and change, and all the human beings that I have lived for and felt judged by, everything goes forward in time, and what mattered was how we were while we were here, while we were together, while there was something to acknowledge at all in this situation of existence. Existence is a heavy word, especially if you're inspired by dying stars. When I say the honesty of your own solitude, I am speaking to you from there. That at some point I realized there is a loneliness that cannot be ignored. There are situationships about reality that in some sense you look and pass beyond. There are moments in this life where I feel like a tourist. I feel like I am visiting existence in the moment. And then there are moments where I say I am not just a visitor, parked in manifestation. I am a member of the human species. And what is that I truly see in the mirror? And what do I find? What do I discover when the world takes a step back? And so do I. That is what the honesty of your own solitude means. You could be, back in the day, a peasant or a king. Right now, you could be a powerless citizen or a powerful world leader. But there will come moments where you will be alone with yourself. And that's the main difference between loneliness and solitude. Solitude is by choice. Loneliness, you don't have a choice. You're lonely. And so I find that there are moments in this life, again, whether you are a statusless citizen or, a high status leader, you would find yourself in those beautiful moments where a person gets to actually know themselves. when there isn't a dependence on anything else. You know, the Buddha, I'm not Buddhist, I'm Muslim, but I have given many talks on Buddhism. And I will tell you this, that the Buddha got one thing right when he said that you are born alone and you die alone, and everything else you experience in during this time is a blessing. So in some sense, I want you to feel and understand that in moments of solitude, you're alone with yourself, acknowledging your own reality. And there are moments that you will experience where you have to confront other humans that exist. Pretty much, if your design is human, you have something to do with humans. If you look in the mirror and you see a human being there, you must realize there's something more important than your own world. For as a religious man, I can tell you that the system admin could have created you in your own world. But why are you able to notice others and yet have your own private meaning to life? The situation is too peculiar, too specific, but it's obvious that there has been 8 billion beings that look like each other positioned to recognize each other. You see, there is something unique going on this planet, at least when it comes to the games that different species play. And humanity has had the most sophisticated awareness to be able to acknowledge lower level intelligence and higher level intelligence. I want you might not ever in this life have felt like royalty, okay? You know, I haven't. In my inner realms, I have. In the purposes that I live for, I have some sort of honor restoration there. But I will tell you that you are a royal intelligence. You're not the child of a king, but you are the creation of an ultimate power. You are a designed entity, meaning, it's honestly one of those things where you look at most things that I've designed, they have their purpose, obvious. So in the design, we can discover purpose, right? And for me, even when it comes to problem solving, I just look at the geometry of the problem and I wonder about what perspective what context the problem is animating in. And when I understand how the context of the problem has arose due to the geometry of the problem, then it's very easy to solve the problem. You see, I am trying to explain to you something hilarious. I am not like some sort of like headmaster of a school of like talented freaks. Do you know what I mean? I am in some sense coincidentally a futurist that has found that the future of the species is of utmost importance. You don't understand. Everything you have felt is important in your life is nothing compared to how important the challenges of our species is. There are moments in this life I have experienced, and the purpose of this episode is to share these moments that perhaps vocally have been uncharted. In this life, there's this beautiful thing that happens when you, by choice, not because you're forced to, you by choice actually walk away into your own solitude, okay? Now, as an introverted, shy person, growing up, I've experienced this like in different levels. But I will tell you this, that you could be a world leader right now, or like the scale of responsibility as an entity may be different, whoever you are listening. But sometimes we cannot be honest in the environments that we have archetypally behaved in front of. And sometimes, you gotta find honesty by remembering a self that is simple enough to process the overwhelming factors of the moment. I want to explain to you what sort of power there lies, or there is, when a human being chooses to acknowledge that when there is no one watching, there is no actor. Human beings, when it comes to ethics, it's a very complicated situation simply by the fact that man simulates value. So you see, it's not that you just find yourself in a world that has existential design and you're seeing this existential design. You compartmentalize your existential perceptions into value. And when you look at what the human species has done, it has actually done something pretty ingenious. The world was too big for us to understand. We were limited beings and we had to, in some sense, live here. So the strategy was that we, in some sense, found a system, symbols in, or the no, like when you look at life, when eyes open and look at the world, they're pretty much perceiving known variables and unknown variables. That is the nature of it. And sometimes situations are very intense and you have to shift your own context as a self. People usually think that they conceptually have to change. No, no, no. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the type of concept you are. It's not about like who you are sometimes. It's about the world you're walking in. And the world you're walking in, its meaning is different than its shape. Now, I want to go back to this point that when you look at something that has design, it tends to be made for a purpose. Think of a hammer, think of a car, think of that argument that somebody is like in some sense walking on the beach and they find a Rolex watch, right? That Rolex watch did not appear, it had a creator. Human beings having a creator simply implies that they are built for a function. Now, it's important to discover that function. Now, how human beings go about it is that they treat revelation as source code, and I do that too. For me, you don't understand. Holy books are not just books. They are openings in the simulation. For me, you don't understand. A person doesn't read a holy book. A person is called towards God. Okay? Now, anyways, aside from my view that the system admin is beyond the world room and this world has a system admin and it ties into the function of the individual state of mind. But to be able to explain it to you in a way there is an honesty, there is an atmosphere you come across when you're with no one. And if you pay attention, the lectures I give, usually I am in front of nobody. I am purely alone. I am present alone with the cosmos and an absence of interference. And I'm trying to explain to you as a human being, as one human being, the value of moments where you, for a second, step out of the crowd of how manifestation archetypally is moving. You see, for me, the study of human existence has been the study of movement within awareness. There are questions about the awareness, there are questions about the movement. There's even questions about the shape of reality. Now, for me, there is something very profound and philosophical about movement, in the sense that there's this argument that has philosophically been brought up that if two spheres in a vacuum spin around each other, which one is spinning around which? So it pretty much means a sort of, I guess, ontological even inquiry or epistemological inquiry of how do we know what is being. And in some sense, we're realizing that it is in our movement. So sometimes you need a bit of stillness and silence and being away from others to get a sense of like what sort of intelligence you are, and then to restore your realization that your movement gives meaning. Right now, because I've started to talk and give a lecture, the concept of a lecture has meaning now. Do you understand? So the meaning typically in human life is generated by being animated. Now, I believe there's a law here that hasn't been mentioned in history, but it is the law of the intelligent, the faster intelligence defining. So what that means is the reason I find that we're able to treat ourselves as human beings on a planet from one physiological perspective, from an existential perspective, it has to do with the speed of change. So we are changing, the world physically is changing slower than we are physically changing. And what I mean by this is that if the atoms that make up the ground of where you're standing right now were changing faster, like if the atoms in your foot were changing faster than the atoms, the particles that are the ground, I'm pretty much saying that if the world was if the floor was changing faster than we were, there would be nowhere to stand. So in some sense, it's a relationship based on speed, based on layers of existential intelligence. When one is introduced to systems thinking, pretty much they begin looking at life as a system. And what a system is in some sense how elements make up the whole thing and how the elements interact and are interdependent. And when we speak about life, we're speaking about a very vast and unknown system that for years human beings have been conditioned to treat it as an objective noun, but in some sense it is more and more being realized that the meaning of this objective noun is as a subjective verb. So, ladies and gentlemen, be cautious of the world you're in, because there are methodologies of approach to how awareness is in the room in the first place. I am trying to tell you that the type of honesty you find in your own solitude is the honesty of a simpler version of self looking at a complex reality. Now, my understanding is that what human beings have been struggling with has not been survival, because survival is not enough. It is no longer survival of existence. It is the discovery of deeper meaning. That means even in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I don't know how to tell you, but there's a moment in life where there's nowhere to go and you have to be with yourself and you have the options of simply observing it or wondering about it in a complex way. Okay? My the whole point of this is to kind of share about the value of shifting our perspective to review civilization again. I have been for a decade consciously wondering about the significance of the human position. To me, it has come across currently as 8 billion soldiers on a battlefield. They're dressed the same. Everybody's in the human uniform. Yet these soldiers are in their own worlds. They're lost souls in a battlefield. And in some sense, what's the point of being a lost soul? To find truth. That's the point. We're all continuing, see, from one angle, I could be like, okay, the Holy Quran has said that there will be an end of days. Everything will return to the system admin. The world is a simulation. Individuals die, systems change, civilization changes. So on some level, I could just be like, yo, man, it all ends. What's the big deal? I could just relax. Right, but from another angle, it's a big deal because of the time limit. For me, it's simply like, what's the best thing a human being can do before they die? To just do the best they can. What is the best thing a species can do before it goes extinct? To do the best it can. But when we wonder about what is the best that a human being can do, it takes our attention to a sort of value system the human being has. And human beings, just from you being raised by like parents and human beings that were born before you're conditioned to have a higher ideal. And what we see in society that we think is like global depression, and the World Health Organization had this like next level statistic that it pretty much was saying the modern generations are depressed and they're all acting, to kind of fit into the cultural fabric as a biosocial entity. But at the same time, true happiness faded the moment human beings realized they're making it more difficult to in some sense be true. You see, the nature of life is that systems arise, and as they expand and change, in some sense they cannot stay the same in accordance to their same values. I have experienced life. I'm 33. I've lived 12,000 days on this planet. I have experienced different states of mind, and I can tell you for sure, in the same way that, how do you say it, like the cells of the body change. Like some cells of the body change every 2 weeks, others range from years. But pretty much the whole notion is that you don't have the same body as you did 10 years ago. Similarly, you don't have the same value system as you had 10 years ago, and yet you're in the present wondering about who you will be in the future. So it's obvious that 10 years from now you will not have the same value system because your eyes have changed. Sometimes it's not the world changes, we change. To be honest, psychological stability for the human race is all about the speed of your inner life changing and the speed of your outer life changing, and whether they're synchronized. To be a human being does not mean to be a physical entity. It does not mean that you are born in this world to be just responsible for physical existence. Let me explain to you what the real game is here. And I will attempt it. And keep in mind, I'm 1 in 8 billion communicating to you, yet I am a member of this species. I'm a human being. I am a testament to the human experience's exploration so far. I do not know how my ancestors would see me now, and I do not know how the future generations see me now. And I do not even know how 8 billion people on the planet see me now. But I know that when I am alone, there is nothing else but the rawness of how I am aware to being. And the issue is that they make you think you're a physical noun and that's your range of responsibility. But actually, as a being, it range is vast. If I explain it to you, you're going to be surprised. So this is how I would explain it. I want you to fathom that there are four areas of advancement for the human being. There is the self. This is an area, this is a sector of life, takes a chunk of your life, most of your life. In some sense, you're trying to advance yourself. Every person you see, as much as you give them past symbols of value, they are seeking future value. It is obvious. Because we are entering the future, we cannot ignore where we're going. So we value the wisdom that helps us to go, where that clarifies where we're going. Okay, so just keep in mind four areas of advancement for the human being. One area of advancement is the advancement of self. You're pretty much looking for an advanced self before you die. The second area is an advanced species. You're a biosocial entity, which means you cannot hide the urge of, if you've cared to want to know an advanced self, a part of you 100% has come to the realization that there's no point of being like Superman in a world where nobody else is Superman, because then you don't know your true power. So in order to know the most advanced self, we actually need to have the most advanced species. We need to be in the most advanced civilization among advanced beings asking that. Advancement of self. I gotta get through this. The four areas of advancement are advancement of self, self-advancement, species advancement, advancement of the species, world advancement, advancement of the world, and then the final is advancement towards the system admin. So to simplify, what that means is, while you have entered this earth room as a being, pretty much the four areas of consideration is, what is the most advanced self? Before you die, you want to see this. What is the most advanced self? State of self. What is the most advanced state of the species? What is the most advanced state of the world? What is our most advanced state with the most advanced power? Now, the thing is, here's where the depth is added. If these are four areas of advancement that you need to be responsible for, you have to also consider that the human being consists of a world in front of its eyes and a world behind its eyes. So right now, I know you can act and say and whatever you want, but I know every human being is living a hidden life behind their eyes, that its depth, totality, surpasses any words they can say. And think of it this way: you have a unique DNA, you're a unique awareness to reality. If I had the same awareness as you, I would be you. So in some sense, there's a veil, there's something hiding. the inner world. So pretty much we find ourselves in front of our eyes in a public physical server, in a public physical world. Behind our eyes, everybody's in their private subjective realm. Okay, they're in their inner server. So there's an external public physical server, and there's an internal subjective private server, but there's even more than that. There's an awareness to object and subject at the same time behind your eyes, but that's for another lecture. The whole point of it is that you're living in inner life and outer life, and there's 4 areas where you need to become responsible for. So if you apply this, there's 8 areas of responsibility. You have to be responsible for your most advanced inner life and your most advanced outer life. You have to be responsible for the most advanced life, inner life of your species and outer life. You have to be responsible for the most advanced outer world and the most advanced inner world. And finally, you have to realize that the most advanced creator, the system admin, is the singularity point from your dual bound life perception. The power of God is that your inner self and outer self and all simulated existence, regardless of the conscious complexity of access to multi-layered perception or multidimensionality, the moment every creation has a private relationship with its creator and a public relationship with its creator. I'm pretty much trying to say, when you find yourself in the chamber, in the honest chambers of your solitude, in the honesty of the chambers of your solitude, you will find yourself that a part of you is physically existing with others, but your mind is animating the meaning others have. So what does that mean? That means here's where it gets interesting. Yes, there's an outer physical self and there's an inner subjective self to me. There's an inner non-physical self and an outer physical self. However, when it comes to others, I don't have access to other people's inner realms. I have access to my own. So it's kind of like your mind is coloring the forms it sees. It's coloring it in with meaning. Even we have the concept of dating. What is that? 2 human beings are looking at each other, their brains project models on each other, and as they communicate, they verify those models. We are looking for an advanced humanity. We're looking for an advanced approach for human beings. Now, most human beings' responsibility level, they're like, yo man, what am I going to do in this life? But human beings that surpass that level, they're like, what are we all going to do in this life? And then in some sense, beings who even surpass that in the future are going to be like, all right, what do we all do in this world, with this world? To be honest, the earth that we experience in 2025 as human beings, it has a cost. There's a cost to existing in 2025, just existing now. And the cost of it is, it's kind of like hilariously, every era in history is making, every moment in history is making a sacrifice. The cost of existing in a world for the human being is to not know what it is. Seems to be intentional. The edge of the external realm is endless. The edge of the inner realms cannot be found. That means in front of your eyes, there is no measuring the whole world, and behind your eyes, there is no one there to measure it at its depth. The cost of being alive in 2025 is that there is sincere effort, but not an advanced organizational system for the effort to properly reach where it's intended. We're living at such a unique time in human history where we're still nationalistically caged. We are 8 billion human beings, members of the same species. It's one species on a rock, and yet we have not understood that all wars are civil wars. All nations fighting with one another is in some sense species civil war. What does it mean? The term existential responsibility and the term experiential responsibility. Are human beings in 2025 responsible for their existence? Are they responsible for their experience? Are they content with, the limitations of their knowledge? Do you know, this life has been designed to satisfy and unsatisfy. In the same way you have a sine wave, it has peaks and troughs. In the same way, in the Holy Quran, in the source code, it says, after hardship comes ease. And pretty much what life is yes, externally it's an obstacle course. But internally, it's like whatever you're going through life, you can just pause and just for a moment, just, laugh to yourself like, what am I looking at? There's moments of reality where, how do I say it? I have been saved by simple silliness more than by complex theories. There is a power that silly simplicity, simple silliness has, that serious complexity never does. You right now find yourself in the human agenda. You find yourself as a member of a species. You find yourself having a living a hidden inner life that's kind of limited to your conveyance of it. Right now, we're in a world where it's easy to be honest, and it is also easy to deceive. But the issue is about short-term reward and long-term reward. To live for our species is a long-term victory. Even though in the short term there's moments where it may not be fulfilling. Solitude in any moment can turn into loneliness. It just requires a memory, just remembering something. I think about how much life was simpler when I was young, and what has really changed is the responsibility that comes with becoming aware to it. And I'm saying this expansion of your awareness continues, and it just keeps going. But at some point, don't forget to simply appreciate. Like, think of it this way. For me, I think of myself as an advanced technology, just the human intelligence. And I think of it that it has settings. And just like you can adjust the settings of your phone, like I feel a human being can adjust their settings that when they're presented by simple concepts, you know, they can simplify the context. Like in the same way that, let's say, a father, their young child, daughter, or something comes and says something to them, and instead of answering based on his own reality, he answers in accordance to the context of the child, right? That means at first in life you're kind of like being raised in the world, but then at some point you gotta raise the world, right? And then it becomes a sort of situation where at the end of the game you're left with how pure you were from the beginning. For me, there is like my own failure. Yes, it scares me. Yes, it creates sorrow, stress, and tension. But the failure of the species, so anyways, I'm saying that if you're smart, you can kind of, like, on some level there is no stupid or smart compared to all the other species on the planet. We're geniuses compared to our the greatness of our future selves. We're always fools trying to figure out what our blind spots were. I want to simply tell you that you exist as a member of the human species, and you belong to humanity's destiny, and to consciously serve it seems to be part of the design of the human. Right now there's wars going on. Like, things are escalating. Leaders of nations, like the fate of 8 billion human beings, or think of it this way, the fate of 8 billion human bodies is dependent on a couple of bodies. It's like, the fate of 8 billion humans depends on a bunch of humans. Okay, now at the same time, the mind of 8 billion humans depends on the mind of a bunch of humans, and in some sense, what I'm trying to say is that we are 8 billion emotional beings, and a bunch of us are leading us, and we're seeing the escalation towards war, and we need the wisdom of the genius. We pretty much need genius to no longer be shy, and with an incredible coordinated retaliation of the most aware people on earth, protect the species from self-harm, right? That means extinction. I'm sorry to say it, but extinction means a self-extinction means a species is committing suicide. If in some sense a meteor hits Earth, in some sense that's like, an external force destroying us. You know, so I'm saying that you need to understand that the species should never even get close to the state of mind that believes that what it knows from the past can define the future. You never know what's going to happen in the future. Last year I got hit by a car, guys. You know, and after I like fell into the air and I was there on just like the street, right? For a moment I was just you don't understand how fragile this life is. You don't understand that if you're attending this event, there's a significance behind it. Someone in the chat section says, "What are you doing?" I am trying to speak to my species and convince it that 8 billion human beings are used to defining themselves from present to past. But in actuality, you can value yourself from present to future. If you've made a mistake, you actually don't have a choice. And human beings have this beautiful expression where they say you got to turn a new page. For me, years before I started talking, I was writing, and writing is more like sculpting, and there's a comfort and ease and less stress to it. But speaking is different, but speaking is way more fun than writing because there's more dimensions of you are engaged. But anyways, what I'm trying to tell you, we're all of us are giving meaning to this show by being actors in it. The value of your consciousness is pretty much like, what is the value of the human existence? Like, the value of your existence is based on how conscious of the world you are. That means how aware you are of what's going on. And in some sense, how much you understand what you know. And understanding has to do in regards to connecting concepts to the context that they are relevant in. Anyways, it's all for how great the unborn future generations who are watching us now will be. We're living for them. You might be someone who, you might not have kids. Like, the best time to honestly get married, I think, is like mid-20s to late 30s. I'm kind of like at the end of the line. But it's just that I'm trying to say 8 billion human beings deserve to get to see. They deserve to see tomorrow. That's the point. The strategy in any moment of overwhelmment is like simplify and take a simple step, which means get to the next day. Like there's that intensity of life, and then there's an intensity of like, all right, civilization means where all of us have made a safe haven of collective, we've all collectively agreed to certain laws to act as our superiors for us to remain civilized in society. Civilization is actually a pretty advanced project. Like, if you're like, yo man, this caveman used to freak out about fire. Like, do you believe there used to be a time where the most advanced technology on earth was fire? They're like, yo guys, we discovered a way to regulate temperature and not die. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yo man, it's like most advanced. Like after that, probably the lantern to be able to transport fire was like the most advanced. And before that, of course, it was like weapons or something. Like the most advanced technology at some point was like a caveman picking up a stick. Like, oh my god, I could use something other than my hand. Do you know what I mean? Anyways, wonder about how many different ways there are to the moment that you're not seeing. Everybody has blind spots. Everybody is imperfect. Okay, the noobs in this world, they identify with what they know. They become fascinated just by what they know. I think the real scholars, the heavy players, like the heavyweights of awareness of in regards to beings aware on reality, they're in some sense being like, all right, you got to deal with your past, deal with the present, and then the future's left. That's it. A total responsibility for the future, to be fascinated by all the I don't knows. That means that when that day comes, when you're more fascinated by what you don't know than what you know, trust me, then you're becoming an advanced being. And I'll give you a perfect example of it. Let's look at racism. Let's look at person A and person B, different appearances, different color skin, different color hair, whatever. It's weird, we're not racist to hair, but we're racist to skin. Like, what is that? You know what I mean? But I'm saying, like, just to consider it, even people can be said to be racist to actions that render people in archetypes. Like, it can get super complex. But I'm just going to say, let's just use a racist person as an example. So there's person A and person B. Let's say person B chooses to be racist to person A. Okay? Right? Now, let me tell you why that's like noob level of intelligence and what the higher level would be. So one example is one person is like, yo man, I know that I'm this color and I know you're that color. I know we're different and that's enough. And that's it. That means it's a closed system. A racist is a closed system of an entity. You're looking at an entity that has closed their system. Do you know what I mean? Right? They've closed their mind. That means their knowledge is enough for them. And that's a tragedy when knowledge is enough for you. In a changing world, being satisfied by knowledge is weird. Do you know what I mean? At some point, you got to understand it's a verb. Do you know what I mean? Like, wait until the species realizes it's a verb the whole time. It's like your mind is a life force. Your body is a life form. They've conditioned your mind to treat your mind as a life form. It doesn't even make sense. And people are like, what is imagination? Am I an idea? Well, guess what? The moment you've had more than one idea, you can't be an idea. Okay? You can't be an idea. You've lived through so many ideas, it's obvious you're not an idea. You inhabit an idea in an instance of movement as being, as being is being. Right? So what I'm trying to say is that the racist is a closed system. The racist is like, I don't need to study anymore. I don't need to update my perspective. I don't need to understand that this human being in front of me is not a statue I could throw something at. It is another human with having an access to human dimension. Any being that has access to humanity must be cared for. Why? Because they're carrying the burden of being a part of their species. In an advanced civilization, the moment the child is born, the advanced civilization is going to gift the parents with whatever sort of surplus. Do you know what I mean? The whole point of it is that you're experiencing in 2025 a civilization that doesn't care for itself. Just like people don't care for, a person cannot care for themselves and let themselves go. Similarly, we're experiencing a species that is acting like it has let itself go, but it can't. There's too much on the line. So the racist, in some sense, is just satisfied by what it knows. But imagine it wasn't like one human being seeing another human being of a different skin. Imagine it was us seeing an extraterrestrial, another being, a different species, a different entity. Do you know? And how would we, in some sense, engage it? Would we be like, yo, man, I'm physical, that thing's non physical, let me be racist to non physical beings? Do you know what I mean? Like, at some point, you're going to understand it's awareness to form. And that's where the stories are starting from. All the stories of meaning ever. It's an awareness in a dynamic system. And in its still points, you can align with for a moment, like as if they're like, what do you have in common with God? Do you know, aside from like having system admin privileges as a user, in our stillness, it seems that we share a moment with the unsimulated surveillance state. All those people, yogis, new age people, sitting in non-duality and meditation and all this and achieving samadhi, they're just accessing the divine surveillance state. It doesn't render their lives meaningful though. You're human to be human. Be human first, serve humanity, and you will be fascinated by the depth of human intelligence being beyond human. And there will come a day where ignorance will break itself. The issue is human beings are caring for like their lifespan and maybe 3 generations. They don't care about the world their grandkids are going to be in. That's the issue. You see, Isaac Asimov had this thing where he said violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. Those people who attack are people who are actually intellectually incompetent. So in some sense, this demonstrates the violence. Do you know what that means? That means that when a human being attacks, it's like you poor, scared, cornered animal. But at the same time, what can one do when their ego is being pushed aside by greater values? You know, the ego has to retaliate. You know, if when somebody's having an ego shift, when somebody's having an ego shift, if they are not rude, that's weird. You know, because that means an emotion has pierced them. You know, an emotion has pierced the sails of your identity. Where will the ego be directed? You see, it's all about states of mind. The issue is everybody's trying to fit it into one story, but it's actually minds that are capable of generating many stories. And yet at the same time, the only thing that has worked when you've looked at great leaders is that usually, like right now, if you wanted to be a general and kind of raise an army, so I'm so casually saying this, if you want to be a general and raise an army, you just have to go on Amazon.com. You got to download this app. No, I'm kidding. If you if you wanted to be a general and raise an army to build an advanced civilization, which I have often thought of, it has occurred to me that they have to have it. There has to be one narrative, and that one narrative has to include shared values. So pretty much, great human efforts do not happen unless there's common human values. And I'm pretty much being like, yo, man, if my ego, I'm trying to say at some point life shifts from a self-obsession of an archetypal continuity, and you begin to realize that you're inside a simulation, and then there's multiple simulations at different time expirate with different expiration dates. So the simulation of the planet is longer than the simulation of our biological body. Sometimes the simulation of our communication is shorter. Or do you know what I mean? The simulation of our communication or thoughts coming and going and noticing constructs in our inner realms, that's even shorter, right? So what really consciousness is like two dimensions changing at two different speeds, and an awareness to both of them, rendering an ability to use the contrast as new reality ignition. I would say something like that. And guys, for those people, I just looked at the chat section. For those people, taking, getting emotional as I'm speaking, um, Aristotle has this thing where it says this: it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. You get emotional when you hear someone else's communication that you think you have to be. And that's why you lash out as a psychological entity, right? So in some sense, you got to realize there is values more important than me, more important than you, and so the value of our attitudes is in the synchronization of an emergence of a greater purpose. Pretty much, like, I don't know, but my mentality is like, yo, man, if there's a species here, we can't just live for ourselves, like. You know, they're like, how did civilization advance? We were classy beings. We're like, species here. Let's kind of like, live well. If we can. And to be honest, I have this thing. You know how they say don't put your eggs in one basket. For me, I have multiple future parallel realities. I can see based on any decision I make to be shifted towards a completely different reality. And really, what life is you're deciding where your attention goes and where, in some sense, the quality of the information you access. Something I've noticed about humans, like communication between a person with another person, right? And I'm saying this more in regards to, let's say, relationships, right? That when one person looks at another person, yes, there is like a physical signifier of value. Just like you have a body that suggests you're a physical being, you have a name that suggests you're a subjective being, right? And when you look at a car, for example, there's the engine of the car and then there's the body of the car. And when you look at human beings, there is their body and then there is their mind. Now, what is the mind of a person? We have this thing where we're like, yo, man, is that a smart information processor or is it a stupid information? Is it a fast information processor or a slow information processor? Like that could replace the idea of smart and stupid, actually. And so, anyways, what I'm saying is when you look at another human being, Their mind is like their engine, but it's not just an engine. It's also like, how is that soul driving their animation as part of manifestation? Do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like when you see someone in a car, you're like, all right, look at how that person's driving, right? And when we look at another human being, we don't say, look at how that soul is moving that body. You know what I mean? We don't say that. We just treat it as if the body is the soul. We've kind of united like this, the notion of intelligence with the form, which doesn't make sense because the intelligence is based on the form moving and changing and being able to contrast with itself, you know, in time. So, anyways, where I'm going with this is that we need to be responsible for our awareness, and we will at some point realize that the ego will fight back. Nobody likes change, and change happens either your sense of self changes before the world does, or the world changes before your sense of self does. And now more than ever, we're at a point in history where we need to immediately shift the global consciousness from nationalism to speciesism. And my prayer to God has been like, help all those, may God guide all those, people in social media, anybody who has some sort of reach, to in some sense look at the leaders of our nation. Do you understand the poetry of the time we're living in? Our world leaders can press buttons that can start World War III and make reality extinct. And now the people have to be like, whoa, 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 what are these noobs doing around these buttons? You know what I mean? In the same way you would be concerned at a child, for example, holding something that's dangerous, similarly, you would be concerned of the leaders of your species, of your nations that in some sense are kind of fragmented right now. We're kind of experiencing a species with multiple personality disorder in regards to like the nationalism of it, but in reality, the soul is one. Do you know what that means? That means we're all headed to the future. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many arguments the abstract possibility of your mind can fathom endlessly about wanting to, like, let me tell you this. The moment you realize life is a simulation, you understand you could have simulated it as anything. That's the first thing you notice. Okay? You could simulate its meaning. I could just in this moment be like, yo, this is a bad lecture, and I could become insecure and just like leave, you know. It's like, yo, did he just leave his own lecture? You know what I mean? Or in some sense, that could be like, this is the most advanced lecture, in some sense, pinpointing the most advanced action, a revolutionary action that human beings need to do, which is the inner action of being like, all right, man, this Mr. Within guy on YouTube has a point. Okay? You know? This YouTuber has a point, man, and his point is everybody relax, species first, then, like primitive tribes put color on your face. Do you know what I mean? What I mean? Put like paint on your face and think you're a nationalistic entity. Do you know the true patriots of humanity are those that are serving the species? There will come a time, in my mind, I was like, oh my God, why are nations is spending so much money on the military? Right? Why are militaries increasing? And I was like, does this mean inevitable war? Because what's the purpose of something existing at all? To fulfill its design, right? And then I realized, yo, man, it's like after Species Unity Day, after Species Unity Day, nations are gonna be like, all right, guys, we united. What do we do with our militaries? And they're gonna be peacekeeping forces. They're gonna help rebuild civilization. Imagine armies coming not to kill you, but to rebuild civilization. Armies that don't act like the angel of death, but as the angel of, advanced re-engineering, advanced design. For me, that's the point of life. What's the point? Like, it's based on the dimensions you acknowledge to yourself. So traditionally, the guy's like, what's the human? And they're like, and the guy was like nervous. He's like, the human is a body, yo, and it's a mind, and it's a soul. No more questions. So they had this traditional view that they're like, all right, at least minimum, there's like three dimensions to you. And the atheist trying to convince you that you're just a physical being, excuse me? Have we forgotten about our memories and imagination not being physical events influencing our physical decisions? Like, there was a time where I would look at these YouTube debates between theists and atheists, and I would be like, yo, man, this is like pure intellectual, like sports, and then later on, I was like, this is the biggest comedy show I've ever seen. One of them is saying the room is empty, the other is not. And humanity's like, yo, whichever said it in a cooler way, it's like, because we're emotional beings. They'll be like, yeah, man, they gave me the most logical answers, the logical solutions. But at the end of the day, I didn't feel like being logical. Can you imagine? That's the fragility. Like, look at the destiny of humanity. They're like, yo, man, were you scared in 2025? I'll be like, as much as I was scared, I was also like, this is the funniest ever era in politics. This is the funniest thing, that the destiny of 8 billion species is in the hands of a bunch of people that could one day be like, yo, man, today I'm having a bad day. I'm laughing out of like the chaos of it all. I'm kind of like this is the laughter of a person shocked with the realization that the species didn't realize its destiny is in the hands of the emotions of a bunch of human beings. It's at the hands of their ethical cores. Like, what if the leaders of all nations were like, all right, like, as of tomorrow, we all want to become robots? Are people going to be like, yo, man, somebody, tell these world leaders to relax and look at their grandchildren instead of try to figure out what their grandchildren would say, rather great grandchildren, rather than their great ancestors? Because the justification for war or any conflict requires a past. And to, in some sense, how do I say it? It's like, take it from someone who was so lonely when I was young. Even though I was around people, I was still lonely, because to be able to communicate is not just enough. Human beings are seeking to be understood. It's kind of like, men realizing the most beautiful thing, or the most important thing that a woman can hear is that she's beautiful, right? You know, in the same way, it's the most important thing for women to realize is that to consider a man strong, because at the end of the day, it's just life force, moving life form. Like, you don't understand what we're standing under. And I don't enter politics with the same reason I don't rap. you know and the answer is because my aim as a soul on this planet is to update the system before I die, and then in some sense wonder about how am I gonna deal with an infinite existence. Because as a Muslim, your afterlife paradigm and scenario is that you're going to be judged, And then based on your deeds and how aware you were of the system admin while you were in the world room, how much you lived for the system admin. That means if you hear me say, guys, I want an advanced civilization, that is a lower way of living compared to we were designed by the most advanced. We can be the most advanced, and we must serve the most advanced before we leave. You don't understand. So many people treat life as something that they need to experience and learn something from. What is there to learn aside from the opportunity to be a being at all? Sometimes when I look at the past, I can't hate it. And they're like, yo, why can't you hate history? And I'm like, is there something wrong with you? And it's like, no, it's easy actually to hate it, but the reason I don't hate it is because I care for the future. I'm a futurist. The purpose of life is the future for me. Somebody can say anything to me, and seconds after, it's become the past. I'm a futurist. I can't really care for them. I'm such a futurist, I can't even care for what I just said right a second ago. But what I'm trying to tell you, I think it is fair to consider that our whole life has been our own valuation, our own evaluation of it. And there are so many ways we could have value that we don't know. And right now, we're at a point where the species obviously cannot believe the same thing, because if everybody believed the same thing, we'd be clones. So we don't want to become clones, but so the idea is not everybody has to believe the same thing. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of impossible because the DNAs are different, the eyes and conditioning and the way that every person's raised is different, the way they're a character to themselves and their own story is different. If I ask you, do you believe in greatness? What would you say as a being? And if I ask you, where is that greatness? What would you say? That means is our greatness in the past because our ancestors were great? Is our greatness in the present because we are the greatest person who's ever lived? Ego code going berserk. Or is it that we are all here waiting for the advancement of the intelligence of the events? If somebody says after living 12,000 new days on this planet, are you bored? I'll be like, oh my God, I am bored with existence. I am bored with like waking up 12,000 times. Another new day? Oh my God. Another new self. I've played the game so many ways. I've played the game of waking up to this world. Now my concern is there was a time I even felt like I could have been out of here much earlier. Do you know what I mean? Because the purpose of these Mr. Within talks is not just for me to like help advance civilization. At least personally, that's what it means to me. But that's not the reason, because there is a system admin here. Ultimately, the system admin decides. Okay, but the value in it is the manifestation of the archetype that has never been there before. That means for me, if I can give a talk and I tap into and I discover or explore and say things that I feel have never been said on Earth, or nobody has even cared to even zoom in on it like that. Do you know what I mean? There's a feeling I have that at least I'm adding a new archetype to the system. Okay, you know, they ask, what does it mean to be an artist? What does it mean to live like an artist? Okay, you know, and I would say I wouldn't say I'm truly an artist. I'm kind of like a, I guess we I'm an artist in the sense of I'm like a designer at heart. For me, design is beautiful. Like, I saw the beauty in design before I saw ethics. That means you don't understand everything is form. We're in a formed world. Like, it's specifically designed. Like, what are you telling me? I'm in a planet that everything's like tuned and specifically designed. That if the earth was closer to the sun, it'd be too hot to live. If the earth was further away, it'd be too cold to live. Like, you know what I mean? If there was no atmosphere, no trees, like like the fact that it's all here is weird. The fact that I can know it's weird is even weirder. So my whole thing is that if see, if an ideological system makes you irresponsible of the future, it's a dangerous system. Be careful of any approach to life that makes you forget the greatness of the future. Like, I'm not even kidding. There's going to be human beings that are going to live on this planet, and they're going to see through all of our blind spots. Like, the only thing I'm doing for the future generations is just pretty much like freaking them out a little. You know, if my predictions are accurate. If I was tuned to the main operating system of reality, that means it's like the same poetry of like trying to find the original Earth as a simulated being, or wondering about what is the most advanced type of being in a simulation. Well, the immediate answer is a being that's beyond the simulation. So God is the most advanced being. So, and when you kind of look at it, it's like, all right, so what is theology telling us? It is actually telling us that there was an original power. It's an original unconditional power, something that we as simulated conditional beings can't fathom. But there is something about us that translates as a system admin privilege. And also, this is my greatest inkling on it, is that the soul seems to be that the awareness to the original memory of being created. That's my clue. Okay, that's what I think. But as a Muslim, the soul is Mysterian, which means it's the secret of God. And it is also the Amr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means it is the command of the system admin that has no equivalent partner in the simulation. You see, it's not just about externally even looking advanced. It's all about responsibility, guys. It's all about responsibility, and what you need to be responsible is awareness. And that's where knowledge becomes interesting. Do you know? And on some level, this is my personal opinion, the most advanced beings on this earth are finding themselves capable of wondering, or how would I say it? The most advanced beings on earth know that it's an unknown event, and you're a being in some sense going through a world, and it's important, your participation, your presence here. What we're going to see in the future is a branching out of culture. I think that World War III is going to be avoided because human beings, to be honest, they don't really have the heart for it. Like old world leaders might, but the new generations that are like live streaming, like billions of younger generations are live streaming video games online. Like, there's a company called Twitch, right? And you look at that generation and you think of the idea of war, and you're like, yo, man, this generation is barely being responsible for its health, right? And they want to now start war. Like nations have so many problems that in actuality they should just kind of be like, they should let the world conflicts kind of pass. But the whole issue is there isn't a greater authority. Again, what is managing you is not just your belief system, it is your value system. So right now, if you ask me what is the most important value on earth, I would say originality. To find the original as a simulated being. That's the first mission. As a simulated entity, and simulated means has beginning and ending, has a beginning and ending. So as it's like before you end, what can you figure out? It's like, yo, like I'm imagining like if I was walking in the park, you know, and an extraterrestrial landed on Earth, hypothetically futuristic scenario, and it's like, yo, podcaster, what's happening here on your planet? What's going on here? And I'll be like, listen, man, it's just a bunch of beings that freaked out and started telling stories, you know, started living inside their own stories, and now are slowly like stepping out of it to realize their responsibility as a being. You see, a human purpose is very different than your soul's purpose. That means if they say, what's the purpose of your body? What's the purpose of being human? And I would say to serve humanity in the presence of the ultimate. But if they say, what is the purpose of your mind? To renounce infinity, to submit its limited infinity to the system admin, and then faith means you have trusted a higher power moves you. Higher power is moving. Higher power is being valued first. The context is it's kind of like the world knows before you know. So every moment people are like, how does this guy know? Is because the moment knows before anything the moment does. And so the purpose of the soul is a return to the original. Is a return. It's like, why can I notice the limited and the limitless? Why? Like, I could understand consciousness advancing a little bit, but why have we reached the edge of symbolic abstraction? The edge of the inner realms is infinity. Infinity, legit, you just multiply duality by itself. And so I'll say it to you, something I'm learning, something that in this like past couple weeks of just giving lectures every day, what I've kind of felt, what I've understood is that life is about the expansion of your awareness and to be responsible for its greatest potential. Do you know what that means? That means if you're a group of friends and one of your friends has talent, you think not as, see, the issue is I want everybody on the planet to think as a genius, strategist, human, member of the human species before their individual life's value system denies their grander ethical expressionism. I'm trying to tell you that the more advanced version of you, it will most likely feel like super flowing. Right now, I feel like the human being is blocked off. Like right now, if they say 2025, was that the year that we could truly see what a human being was? I would say no, even though we got really close, but it's not this year. Because human beings are still living in their own worlds before they're actually living on Earth. That's the issue with children, right? That's the issue with emotional immaturity and immaturity of all kinds. It's that the person's still stuck in their own world. They don't understand that there are rhythms in the outer realms where the kind of biosocial entities kind of unite and act in accordance to. But those rhythms need to update, and that's why sometimes if you find yourself to be the strange one in the moment, little do you know you're the catalyst, or you're you're the agency of change. You know what that means? That means you're the introduction of the new archetype. Sometimes I wonder, is my personality just uniquely me, or is it how the future already, its potential exists and the mind is following through with it? How do I say it? It's like our outer life, our inner life is how our mind, human intelligence is living ahead of the moment. You could be watching TV and you get hungry, and in your mind you've already opened the refrigerator door. You can already see yourself eating food. Your mind can leap ahead. Your mind, like the movie Jumper, can leap ahead, or it can fast forward, or it could geometrically expand. This is up to your own unique DNA's access. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that all knowledge roots back to this deep mystery of a changing world and the original awareness to it. And never forget, go directly to the system admin rather than engaging any spiritual moderators. That means if a shimmering light being appeared in front of me right now, helped me in all the endeavors of my life, and at the end was like, I'm God, I'll be like, as much as I'd like to believe the shimmering light being is God that has helped me, I would have to in some sense be like, sorry man, we're in a simulation. It's like a sauna or like a room. When you're in the room, you can't act like you're outside the room. And that's honestly what knowledge is, folks. It's beings in a world room being like, what's going on? Noticing the world room is a condition. The noun was actually part of a verb, and the verb is way beyond the human scope. And so we have to be responsible in adjusting our perception. See, back in the day, survival of the fittest was the adaptation of the body of the entity. Like it had to kind of like fight off things and like run away properly, or like climb or something. Do you know what I mean? Now it's your mind that is adapting. It's survival of the fittest minds. Okay? And what that means is it's all about awareness to what's actually there, and you realizing that your personality, yes, it is value. Like there is a value to you, how you animate as an individual uniquely. But I'm saying it is not the whole room. That means if you treat one room of a house as the whole house, that's an ignorance that you must, fix from within. Why even the emergence of lesser values, of lesser archetypes, if the intelligence has been capable of seeing a greater future archetype? The whole point of greatness is, all right, what's happening now, right? Like the educational system's like, yo man, look at what happened back then, you know that's the educational system. And your own eyes are like, okay, I'm seeing what's happening now, and what's left is the future. I keep going back to this because you don't understand the consciousness shift. That means, imagine you're listening to me talk and I say a sentence and you take that as an impression of me, right? And then you have no interest to hear the rest of the lecture. Do you know what that means? That means you lazy, close-minded silly goose. You know what I mean? You gotta wonder about the geometry that is revealed to your awareness. That means if I'm sitting somewhere and somebody comes and talks about a topic that I've never heard of before, I can't just close the lid on that topic. It's like, why did that geometry enter my attention? Pretty much the way I'm kind of appreciating every day of my life is I wake up and I discriminate between what is a looped value, what is looping, and what is new. And if you can't be honest, you miss out on the novelty. That means this, nobody might have said this, but creativity is proportional to honesty. Honesty is functioning in accordance to original data. And sometimes society might have conditioned you to think that you have to be a complex persona, but you might be a much simpler being than your personality. I can tell you, I am a way more simpler person than like I come across in these talks. Okay? I do this as a responsibility because I'm a human. If I was like a caterpillar, I'd be talking to other caterpillars about like, yo guys, we're butterflies. You know, let's it's like, we're going to be butterflies. The cocoons have a purpose. We're not just being weird. You know what I mean? Pretty much, you're caring for yourself. Expand your horizons. Care for the species. As when you function from species level consciousness, you will depression of an individual nature can't even touch you. When you live for a greater value, when you affiliate, when you connect to a greater value, I am telling you, the world respects it. For me, it's like this. Karma was a distraction. Karma was a distraction, and I understood samsara was not samsara. Enlightenment was the samsara. To be free means it's impossible. You're an imperfect, conditional, temporal being. But to, in some sense, wonder about freedom. See, for me to wonder about, like, okay, I'll give you an example. For me to wonder about, like, my own beauty or my own strength or my own, like, ability is, like that's like its own TV channel, right? And then for me to wonder about what is the innate meaning of beauty, what is the meaning of wisdom, what is the meaning of, perception, you know? So I am telling you as an example, as one human being, I have managed to notice that I'm in my own world, inside a world that I didn't create. And when I wonder about what world the world is in, there is nowhere else for a simulation to go aside from the original moment. This might sound bizarre, but I think manifestation is like something was expressed and is now returning to the original. Everything you see for a Muslim, take it from Muhammad Ali. You can even see it in the interview. He was being interviewed, and this kid comes up to Muhammad Ali, the boxer, and he says, this young kid asked Muhammad Ali, like, what are you going to do after you retire? And I don't remember Muhammad Ali's exact answer word by word. He speaks with a rhythm, though. He speaks in verse. But Muhammad Ali said, I have 21 years to prepare to meet my creator, to meet the system admin. That's why it's fascinating to be alive, because it's all going somewhere. We are simulated now. Once the simulation finishes, the original reality remains. That means there will come a day where everything you're doing, you're going to understand what it means, like really to serve God. It's to serve the highest ideal. It's to serve the highest archetype fathomable. Why was Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last messenger? Because he pointed what Prophet Abraham, peace be upon him, started. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, finished. And what that means is they both pointed, in some sense, to the singularity beyond changing manifestation, and they were like, hey, beings on in a world. The world is not worthy of worship. If somebody says, so what do we do if we're in a simulation? Perhaps through the honesty of your own solitude, you will realize the only way to truth is to be true and honest at the core of your awareness. That means if you don't know something, you're honest about it. This is the most important thing, because within years of living honestly, you will feel worthy of your life. But if you live dishonestly, you won't feel you deserve your life. Human beings are complex psychological beings. You do too many mistakes, you feel you don't want to even play the game. That's the nature of it. But those who continue, that means it's like every day we log back into this existential game, and experience expands its horizons. And truth is beyond man. That means if somebody says, like, how can even truth be known? Man is in the presence of truth. This simulation is happening somewhere, so the original was the first somewhere. Anyways, thank you for listening. And rise, mankind, rise in the presence of the one and only. The future of every being is an original return. We are being tested in this simulated testing zone within a divine surveillance state to see if we can trust beyond ourselves. If we can not just trust ourselves, not just trust our body, mind, soul, but in some sense to trust the body, mind, soul of the species, the body, mind, soul of the world poetically, and eventually realizing that yes, we are in a simulation contained within natural laws, but natural laws are within divine command. Do you know what that means? That means the system admin can change the variables. Destiny means it's even coded from before. So anyways, guys, thank you for listening. Somebody in the chat section says, what are you talking about? You got to listen to the whole lecture. But what I'm talking about is that the future is more important than the past. So why value yourself just based on the past? It's like you're in a world once, like, and you're not gonna be true in it. Become fascinated by life, and anything you become fascinated by, fascination is the gateway to true greatness. Remember that. Thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful.